Even though some parts of the economy feel precarious, there is no denying the strengths of the job market. Here's a look by the numbers. The total job market in Canada at the end of last year was 18.8 million people. The vast majority, or almost 15 million of those jobs, are in the service sector, one kind or another. And within services, retail, healthcare make up almost half of those jobs. Another few million jobs are directly or indirectly tied to housing and development. But as we all know, unfilled positions are the story in Canada. In fact, 1 million jobs companies want to fill and can't. And with our jobless rate sitting at an all-time low of 5.1%, you would think that would mean workers are in the driver's seat. But while wages rose last month, the 3.9% gain hardly kept pace with an inflation rate of 6.8%. Given how the numbers shake out, it should feel like a great time to be an employee in Canada and an even better time to be looking for work. But is it? We keep hearing that a recession could be on the way. So will the good times last if they were ever really here? Jim Stanford is an economist and director at the Center for the Future of Work. Jim, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Amanda.
And I want to dwell on that point for a second, because these are the good times, and yet you have inflation on the other side of the equation. So even if you've got a good job, your cost of living has gone up dramatically. Is this, are we in a kind of a period where you would say, yeah, recession feels likely, or does it feel strange that we've got full employment and yet we're worried about the economy cratering?
Yeah, it does seem strange. You walk around a street in your city and you see all the help wanted signs and you think, gosh, the economy is booming. And, you know, by some measures it is. On the other hand, stock markets are tanking and interest rates are rising and housing prices are falling, and we don't know what comes next. So it does seem in a way unfair after years and years of a labor market that was chronically underutilized. There was more people than jobs. Finally, we've got a situation where workers have a much better chance of finding work, yet it looks like they're going to take away the punch bowl before the party even really gets started.
Is there a piece of this, Jim, that's a bit pernicious, which is to say businesses actually will be hurt by their inability to find workers? In other words, you could actually be doing even more as a business, but you can't find the labor to fulfill it. So you're also kind of squandering what should be a pretty healthy period for you.
Well, from the business point of view, they see this as a negative. The fact that, you know, in the olden days, you'd put out an ad and you'd get 15 or 20 resumes the next day. Today, that's not the case. Today, business has to compete to try to attract workers. The workers are there. Labor force participation is high. Employment is at the highest level ever. So it's not that Canadians aren't working, but they do have a chance to be a little bit more choosy about what jobs they decide to take. And that's why it's those low-wage, very insecure, low-quality industries like hospitality and retail that have the biggest number of vacancies. And ironically, they're the ones offering the lowest wages. So go figure. You know, there's a thing called supply and demand. If they want workers, they've got to kind of improve the offer. And I think this is a moment when employers should be challenged, including in those industries, to sort of rethink how they're doing business, find ways to do it with fewer workers and more technology, and offer people better, more secure jobs. I think that's the ultimate solution. If we end up in a recession, though, then all that pressure dissipates and employers will just carry on as usual.
So, I mean, interesting, obviously, you're not just saying raise wages, which would, of course, raise prices for everybody as well, making inflation work. You're saying do a combo of make the jobs better, higher quality, and supplement with an investment in technology and kind of some jobless work. In other words, putting in the machines instead of people. You'd rather have fewer high-quality jobs than a whole bunch of low-paying, low-quality jobs?
Yeah, the wages are part of the problem, but frankly, the hours in retail and hospitality are a bigger problem. People don't get enough hours and they're too irregular and they don't see it as a place where they can build a career. So I think employers could address those issues as well as lifting hourly wages, which they should do. And then across the board, Canadian business just has to get better at implementing new machinery and technology. We've got terrible rates of investment in machinery and investment, machinery and equipment investment in Canada, poor productivity as a result, and employers just, in a way, they need a kick in the pants to think about how they could run their businesses effectively with fewer workers, and that would be a good thing.
So we don't have a ton of time, but if you're pulling out a crystal ball here, Jim, do you think the situation will be good for workers in a year or bad for workers? In other words, are we headed towards a recession that might mean layoffs, or will we kind of weather it because the job market is so solid?
Well, if I look at history, Amanda, there's never been a situation where we reduced the rate of inflation by 4 or 5 percentage points without requiring a recession to make that happen. And the Bank of Canada said they're going to bring inflation to 2% no matter what. So I'm pessimistic about what's coming down the pike, and in a way that's all the more cruel that workers finally have a chance where they're in the driver's seat of this labor market, but I worry it's not going to last.
Certainly didn't last long. Jim Stanford, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Jim Stanford, an economist and a director at the Center for Future of Work. Well, the stories from businesses trying to recruit new workers or hang on to the ones they already have are very common. Workers with the right skills who are willing to do the job the way it needs to be done seem to be hard to find. Jonathan Azzopardi is president and CEO of tool and mold manufacturer Laval International. Great to have you with us, Jonathan.
Nice to be here, Amanda.
So what's the situation for Laval? Are you in need of workers you can't find?
Well, definitely. We've been dealing with this for some time, and I agree with everything that your last guest said. We're in a situation where we've never been in this situation before. We are busy. Manufacturers in general are just, trust me, they don't have excess capacity, but they're definitely limited by people. And they could make more investments. I agree, and that is definitely on the horizon. They're going to figure out how to get it done with or without the workers, unfortunately.
So on the worker piece, what kind of different strategies might you be using to find the work you need? Because we know even before this global pandemic, there was a skills mismatch in this country, right? That you may have even then been looking for some jobs you couldn't fill. What are you doing differently to try to fill them?
Well, you know what? That's a great question, and I don't think there's a single answer to it. That's the complicated part about labor. Right now, we obviously have a skilled trade shortage. We're using our skilled workforce now, using them as much as we can, right? Keeping our efficiencies, making investments. The other part is we're starting to use some of those untapped labor pools that historically haven't been used for skilled trades. Young women, for example, immigrants. We're actually filling those positions now the same way they did shortly after the war. We don't have enough Canadians, and we don't have enough traditional skilled trades. So we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to attract and retain.
And meanwhile, as you say, you're running full tilt. Your business is busy. Are you, to the point Jim was making, looking at investments you can make that do kind of modernize in some way, that take maybe some of the workers out of the equation but put machines in instead? Is that sort of part of the process here?
Oh, that's been part of the process for many years, but it's been accelerated now, not just because of the labor situation you're dealing with, but costs. Costs have dramatically gone up in the last 2 years for everybody. And labor shortage is just making it more difficult to fill that pool. So we're having to make lots of investments in automation to try and make up for these differences. If you went back to our company 20 years ago, we were doing half the business with twice as many people. I believe that trend is going to continue to accelerate. And really, that's the future of Canada. Really, we're never going to be a low-cost country with an abundance of labor. We're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to be technologically advanced on a global platform.
Meanwhile, of course, we keep talking about the potential for a recession. Nobody knows for sure. But to Jim's point, you don't often slay inflation without one. From your point of view, for your business, can you prepare for that? What are you thinking about that when it comes to recession?
It's a big problem. I don't necessarily think that a recession is going to solve our issues. I'm a big, strong believer that what you're dealing with right now, specifically with the labor, we've had a labor shift. Right, we've had people who are in low-cost or low-wage salary positions, and they've moved up. So I think that's part of the equation we're not taking into consideration. The other one is these are cost increases. Our base material, which is metal, is 100% higher today than it was 3 years ago. That's not going to go away when you change the interest rates. So I honestly don't think that a recession is going to solve all of these issues, because a lot of them are coming from base material costs.
Jonathan, so good to have you with us. Really appreciate the insight.
Thank you, Amanda.
Jonathan Azzopardi is president and CEO of Laval International. Coming up, Tim Hortons takes the cup for best brand in Canada, despite some recent controversy. But first, this. It is the end of an era for Microsoft's Internet Explorer. If you're young enough, you don't even know what you're missing. Microsoft's once globally dominant browser is no more. The company announced about a year ago that it would stop supporting the browser, and that day came this week. Explorer was once so ubiquitous, Microsoft was sued in Europe and the US for anti-competitive practices. It was never very good technically, if we're honest, and really it died a natural death as users turned to alternate browsers. So long, Explorer, we hardly liked you. Back after this.